Constitutional lawyer Rocco Galati is back in action again after his loss in the Bank of Canada case, this time to sue the federal government in regards to CETA, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. This is the trade deal between Canada and the European Union. Representing Paul Helleyer, along with Emmett and George Cromwell, these are two prominent members of COMER, the Committee on Monetary and Economic Reform. This is a constitutional challenge which will decide whether or not CETA is violating the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Rocco will be giving a press conference on this tomorrow morning, Tuesday, October 25th at 10 a.m. and PFT correspondent Lawrence McCurry will be on site to report on this, so stay tuned for that report. But in the meantime, here's my analysis. First off, it's great that people are getting out there against this thing, provoking a constitutional battle about these so-called free trade deals. This really is the only way we're going to get this issue into the corporate state media. My problem with it, of course, is that the state is going to do what the state is going to do. The Supreme Court is not some independent branch of government, despite what it may say on paper. The Supreme Court is an apparatus of the government, and it's paid for by you and me, the taxpayers. Second, and this may rustle some feathers out there, I'm sure, but the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is just a piece of paper, and a bad one at that, because there is no mention to the right of private property. In fact, before the Charter, around the time of the founding of Canada in the late 19th century, it was assumed that natural rights were a God-given right. At the time, nobody assumed that a piece of paper is what granted rights and privileges to people. The American Bill of Rights only illustrated the inalienable rights that Americans had. And even in theory, the Canadian Charter only guarantees rights and freedoms, and that guarantee, of course, comes from the state. In the British and American and Commonwealth traditions, personal liberty was the default position. Nowadays, we treat freedoms as if it's some sort of special privilege that the state bestows upon us, like a gift. So while I applaud these guys for fighting back against the system, I gotta ask myself, is an expensive constitutional challenge in the kangaroo Canadian courts really the best means to go about this? Especially following the loss of the Bank of Canada case. At the end of the day, the state is going to do what the state wants to do. And what it's going to do is wrap itself in a cloak of mythology that tricks people into thinking that they are the only solution. They are the only way, and that crony corporatism is what free trade is, and that central banks are the only way to have sound money. We are not the government, and the laws of the books are the rules of criminals. So uprooting this system is going to mean changing people's minds about what the state is. If there's anything better than people fighting in the Supreme Court, it's people disengaging from this idea that the Supreme Court has any authority at all. That the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is anything but a charter of privileges, subject to interpretation by the state through its authorities. We can't appeal to the state to reject CETA. They're the ones who created it. Stay tuned for more reports as we continue to follow this case. Check the links in the description for all the sources to this video, and also to find out where you can join us as a Press for Truth member or a PFT patron. And stay tuned, guys, we've got more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth.
It's a big challenge for people who have lived their whole lives sort of thinking government's the solution to everything, and that political power and democracy, that saves the day, and they don't recognize that's actually the enemy of humanity. That's what has to be done away with, is the belief that that's the source of society, is a violent ruling class, and no, it isn't. That's the biggest problem.